Hello everybody, this is Yamalol bringing you my first Magic the Gathering deck tech featuring Padeem, Council of Innovation. Just a couple of notes before we start. I do not participate in CEDH, but that does not mean I do not try to make my decks as strong as they can be. My decks also try to be unique takes on the commanders they are built around and try to incorporate some underused cards. Some cards I cannot include in these decks due to cost, and some I just included because they are already in my collection at the time. Padeem is a 3 and a blue, 1/4 legendary Vidalcan Artificer. She lets us, at the beginning of our upkeep, draw a card if we have the highest or tied converted mana cost artifact, which will be most of the game due to playing some big artifacts in this deck. Most importantly though, she gives our creatures hexproof. This, coupled with having all of our artifacts indestructible, leads to a truly mind-boggling situation for our opponents. With all these out of the way, let us get started with the deck tech. To begin, I will talk about the core of the deck, the indestructible creatures, and the other protection methods. All these cards either have or give indestructible protection and hexproof or shroud. I only recently got Blightsteel because of cost, but the deck could run without it. Another reason you might not play it is because people may not like it due to having infect, although it is a win con when giving an unblockable or just with trample. Darksteel Colossus is basically Blightsteel without infect. Colossus of Akaros is a huge 20/20 creature when Monstrous is online. Darksteel Gargoyle is good for blocking our opponent's flyers. Juggernaut can also be quite big, and it's good for keeping pressure on our opponent since it keeps attacking and not dying. Flashing in Darksteel Sentinel on our opponents could be a nice way to get a free block or kill an attacking creature. It also has Vigilance, so it can attack for free. Creepy Doll, Darksteel Mirror, Edge Champion, and Stuffy Doll are all cheap creatures to deter our opponents from attacking us. Thassa is not an artifact, but she does have Indestructible. She lets us scry 1 at the beginning of our turn, which is a bonus, but her main role is to provide unblockable to our huge creatures. Stonecoil can either be played early for a block or later for the damage. It also has reach to deal with flyers. Darksteel Citadel is another on-theme indestructible artifact, but in this case it is a land. The Forge gives the rest of our artifacts we control indestructible, so it allows them to synergize with our commander even more. Reactor can win us the game if we get it out early enough so it can accumulate the 20 counters. That which was taken gives us the ability to protect any card we want. Plate, Lightning Greaves, and Swiftfoot Boots are all specifically given to our commander to protect it. This is so we can have our commanders of hexproof ability on the field for longer. I put some cards that have claims to be put in the deck, but I either think are not powerful enough or are just bad cards in general. It could also be a cost reason. Axe giving only +2/+0 isn't really good in my opinion in this deck since our creatures are already massive. Root is not a creature on the battlefield unless you keep pumping mana into it each turn, or even in the circumstances you could block with it. The mana can be better spent on an actual creature. Ingot, it's a mono blue deck, so what's the point when it makes all the colors? Pendant let us only scry 1 isn't very efficient. Thassa does the exact same thing plus has bonuses. Relic, this is not a Metalcraft deck or a deck that synergizes from having a bunch of cheap artifacts on the field. Garrison is the only card with fortification in the game. I wish they would print more cards like this, but unfortunately this particular one is not that great in this deck. Shield of Caldera, we do not run a sword or helm, and we have other ways to make our creatures indestructible. Hammer of Nazaham, this isn't a heavy equipment deck, so the first ability isn't really that good, and we can just use Darksteel Plate instead. I used to have Soul of New Phyrexia in this deck, but I took it out because the cost for it, and it does not have indestructible itself innately. Eldrazi Monument could be a good card in this deck because of the +1/+1 boost and giving our creatures flying, but I don't want to start sacrificing my high costing artifacts. We do not run a lot of token generation, so I do not run this card personally. This next column is all the main mana related type cards. Ethereum Sculptor, Foundry Inspector, Cloud Key all let me cast artifacts for 1 generic mana less. Ugin the Ineffable lets us cast all colorless cards for 2 less. It also has token generation, card advantage, and removal abilities. We have 2 mana dorks in Silvermere and Palladium Mirror. Silvermere produces a blue mana and Palladium Mirror adds 2 colorless. Soul Ring because Soul Ring and I cannot afford the super expensive mana rocks. Mind Stone is good in this deck because we can draw a card when we need to. It is also good return target for more draw. Myriad Landscape is to help fetch a couple islands out of our deck. Temple of the False God and Shrine of the Forsaken God can give us 2 colorless mana each. Urza's Mine, Power Plant, and Tower. These lands when combined produce 7 mana. We also have some ways we can search for them. Teleria West and Expedition Map both are in the deck to search for lands, specifically the Urza lands. Majoring Network can store mana on it for later use if we need it to. Next we have all the draw cards in the deck. Blighted Cataract can be sacrificed to draw 2 cards if it is not needed. Lonely Sandbar and Remote Island can both be cycled, or you can play them if you need the blue mana. Karn's Scion of Urza gives us card advantage with its +1 and -1. His -2 can create a construct token that is big as the amount of artifacts we control. One with the machine draws us cards equal to the highest mana artifact we have, and that will be a lot of new cards in our hand. Thirst for Knowledge can draw us 3 cards for 3 mana, but we have to discard an artifact, which won't be that hard. Reverse Engineer is a draw 3 for 2 blue mana if we tap any 3 artifacts for Improvise. Sensei's Divine Top helps us organize the top of our library to either get us lands if they are there or to sort the cards we do not need. We can also get a card early by putting the top back on top of the deck. Serum Visions and Mishra's Bauble are both cheap draw spells. Bauble can also be resurrected. The Dalk and Archmage lets us draw a card for each artifact we cast. Staff of Nin and our Commander both let us draw an extra card each turn. Some of the tutor cards we run in the deck include Acquire. It searches our opponent's deck for an artifact and puts it under our control. We can usually get something that helps us from an equipment or a good mana rock if needed. Muzio, Visionary Architect lets us look at the top X cards of our library where X is the highest mana artifact, and one artifact from among them goes onto the battlefield under our control. This synergizes well with our big artifacts we play. Fabricate, Inventor's Fair, Sanctum of Ugin, and Treasury Mage are all great tutors in this deck as well. We also could have played Trophy Mage, Trinket Mage, and Tribute Mage, but I don't think they synergize as well as Treasure Mage in this deck because they search for lower costed artifacts when we have mostly higher costed ones that we want to look for. Next are our recursion outlets. Academy Runes lets us return an artifact from our graveyard to the top of our deck. Buried Runes returns an artifact from our grave to our hand, but the line gets sacrificed. Our Given Restoration puts an artifact from our graveyard onto the field. Good value if we bring back a big artifact. Junk Diver, Mirror Retriever, and Workshop Assistant all return another artifact from our graveyard to our hand when they die. Junk Diver also has flying. Scrap Trawler kind of does the same thing, but it is when an artifact goes to the bin we get a lesser converted mana artifact. Mishra's Bauble works well with this card since we can always have a target in our graveyard. Swan Song, Counterspell, and Disallow. Swan Song lets us counter enchantment, instants, and sorceries for only 1 blue. The bird the opponent gets isn't a big deal. Disallow can also counter activated abilities and triggered abilities. Curse of the Swine is a nice exile card. We can choose which cards we want to exile. Cyclonic Rift is good to clear all of our opponent's boards while leaving ours alone. Hellvault lets us remove our own creatures if we may think it's the only way we might be able to get them back. For example, if our opponent tries to exile one of them, it can also remove an opponent's creature. Scour from existence, just exile any target permanent we want. We run a few copy outlets in this deck. Thespian Stage can become any lands we have on the field. It could be an Urza's Tower for 3 extra mana. Cryptoplasm can copy any creature for only 3 mana. I think anybody would like a second Blightsteel for that amount of mana. Mirrorworks allows us to pay an additional 2 mana when we cast an artifact, which is a sweet deal. Mechanized Production will create a copy of the enchanted creature each turn. This will let us have a constant flow of big creatures coming into the battlefield. If we have 8, we instantly win the game, so that is a bonus, especially if the artifacts is indestructible and untargetable. Sculpting Steel can copy any artifact we want, and Rider Replication can make 5 copies of any creature. It also quick starts Mechanized Production. A few cards that are gonna help us win more are Rogue's Passage, which will make Blightsteel or another one of our big 2020 or 11/11 artifacts unblockable. Eldrazi Construction can give a creature trample if it doesn't have it. The +10/+10 Annihilator 2 could overwhelm our opponents. This on Colossus of Akros makes him 30/30, which is absurd. Unwinding Clock can give us more mana than our opponents with our Dorks and Rocks. It also kind of gives vigilance to our artifact creatures because of the untap. We can also use our tap artifacts more with this card. We only run a couple of token generation cards in this deck. Vicious Factory can become a 2/2 if we needed to. Boundary of the Councils can be sacrificed to make 2 1/1 Langthopter tokens. Urza's Factory creates 2 artifact creatures without being sacrificed. It also completes the Urza's lands thematically. Hangerback Walker can get big if we put a lot of mana into it, or over time by tapping it, especially with Unwinding Clock. When it dies, it makes 1/1 Thopters with flying. Other miscellaneous cards in this deck include Batterskull, which is to give our creatures vigilance. Also the Lifesteal and +4/+4 is nice to gain a lot of life. Memna can make our commander an artifact, so our ability can work on herself. It can also steal an opponent's artifact if needed. This deck is in no way trying to be a Memnarch deck, I just think it complements the deck nicely. Metalwork Colossus is another big artifact that unfortunately doesn't have indestructible. It could also be played for 0 mana potentially though. Platinum Angel can help us stay in the game, especially if we well protect or copy it. Silent Arbiter can help against token strategies or faster decks by only letting one creature attack and block. Wonder gives all our creatures flying when it is in the graveyard. Masterful Replication could be a good card if we transformed all of our artifacts into a big boy, but we don't really go wide enough for it, I think. Lastly, Reliquary Tower, so we can keep our hand if we have over 7 cards in it. It's either the Sinnoid because it is a blue artifact land, so there's no reason not to include it in the artifact deck. Tomb of the Spirit Dragon can give us some life for all the colorless creatures we have. And lastly, all of our islands because it is a blue deck. Thank you for watching, everybody. Please leave a comment letting me know how you like the format of the video, how you think the deck is, and any other feedback you might have. See you in the next one.